What's up, people? Once again, we're down in the Sweep the Leg Cobra Kai shirt. If you want one, go to contendersclothing.com. We got Cobra Kai stuff, Karate Kid. You got the Muhammad Ali line, and of course, my old favorite, the Rocky line. So check it out at contendersclothing.com. Use promo code KIDPOKER20 to save 20% off of your purchases of underwear. I'm wearing them right now. What do I got on? I got Clubber Langs on right now. I'd show you, but I don't know. This video will probably get pulled. Anyway, welcome to another edition of old school, new school analysis. We're going to go over a hand from the super high roller ball, which is, that's a big one. It's deep stacked, lots of play, all the top geniuses and wizards here at the table. I've done quite well in it in my history. I mean, I did come second to Bonomo not too long ago, winning $3 million. And here I'm at a table with, a bunch of killers. And in this hand, with lines at 1 and 2,000 and a 2,000 ante, I'm sitting pretty. I got myself 352,500. Budjakowski has 113,000. So let's start the analysis. We're going to do old school, whatever you call it. We're going back. We're going back to the black and white. Okay. When I go old school, I got to get a little dumber too, because frankly, it's just like less sophisticated. All right, there. So I'm in there, with the 10 jack of hearts. Say, why do I do an accent when I'm going dumber? At least it wasn't in I won't even say. It's 2021. You got to be careful, bro. Canceled. Fuck it. I'm uncancelable. Here. All right. So we're going to go old school, right? Okay. All right. I'm in this tournament here. I'm doing really good in chips, so I'm going to start to push the envelope a little bit and play some pots. So I pick up the jack 10 of hearts under the gun, and I'm going to make it, 2.5 times the big blind, right around. I'm going to make it 5,000. Basically just try to steal the blinds. You know what I mean? And if somebody plays, it's okay. I got a hand that can play pretty good after the flop. If they 3-bet me, I can, take a flop too, maybe bust them off of a hand like aces or kings or something like that. So anyway, Budjakowski, he calls me sitting right next to me with, he's got a couple of, should I say what he's got? Yeah. Well, you're going to see it anyway. He got a couple of 9s, right? And he just calls her. It seems pretty normal. Now the pot's 15,000 because everybody else folds. And here comes our flop, comes 8, 7, 6, 1 heart. So I'm sitting here, I got nothing, right? But I did raise under the gun. So when you raise under the gun, people usually think, okay, maybe you got big overpairs and stuff like that. Plus people know, I like to play them little suited connector type hands, right? So if he doesn't have any of that, if he's got king, queen, or ace, queen, or ace, jack, maybe I can just bet it here and pick it up on the flop, right? And if not, I could still catch a 9 and make a straight, the nut straight that way. And maybe I can really screw him if he's got a 10 in his hand, right? If he flopped the nuts 9-10 somehow, then a 9 comes in the turn, woo, baby. We'll probably get it all in that spot. So I go ahead and I bet 5,000 and 15, kind of small, just a little feeler. I would do that probably with aces and kings too, so it's fine. Now he raises me to 16,000, which is kind of I'm like, damn, bro. I'm sitting here representing aces or kings, or even better, because I have all those little. I would play all these suited connectors and stuff like that. So for him to raise is kind of whoa, I didn't expect that at all, right? But for 11,000 more, I'm getting a decent price to go ahead and call, And maybe what I'm thinking is, I can call a bet, and if it goes check check on the turn, if a scary card comes on the river, maybe I can bluff him, right? And I can bluff him because my image too, most of the time, is people see me as old man Nit, so I can go ahead and call this. Because if I call, right, on the flop, I have to have something, right? So if I call the flop, it goes check, check on the turn, and the river's a deuce, and I bet, he's going to think I have an overpair, or maybe even better. So if he doesn't have anything, I could win it that way. That was one of my plans if I don't hit, okay? So I call the raise, now the flop, now the pot has 47,000 in it, and the turn is gin, baby, gin, baby, gin. I hit the 9, but since he raised me on the flop, I'm not going to bet. I'm just going to bet into him when I hit that. So I just check, and I'm planning on check raising here, because if he bets, I'm going to think a lot of the time he's got a straight, right? He's got a 10, he's got a straight. Or if he bets, let's say he's got a set or 2 pairs, something like that. Now I can, charge him for it with my nut straight. So I'm going to check. I figure he's betting a decent amount, or he's going to bet a lot of the time. But he checks it back after a bit. Now the river's the 8 of hearts, so it pairs the board. Whatever, it's fine. I mean, we still have the nuts straight, so we're still good, right? There's not many hands he can have that beat us. So I check, and with 47,000 in the pot, my man Makita Bet 60,000. So now I'm thinking, all right, well, it's me. He knows it's me. He knows I like to call. He knows I got something pretty strong because I called the raise on the flop, right? I raised under the gun, then I called the raise on the flop. So he's thinking like, all right, he's being greedy. That's what he's doing. He's thinking, well, Daniel can't fold a hand. So if Daniel has a 10, he's always going to call 100%. And whatever, if he has aces or kings, he might fold anyway. So he's going for like the gusto. He's just getting greedy here with the overbet in a spot where I'm like, he's just, Dean Egg's payoff wizard. I'm the guy who goes, I know you got pocket nines and whatever. I call and then they show you the pocket nines, right? So that was my thought process. When he did that, I just thought to myself, like, this guy's not bluffing here. Not for that, because he knows it's me and he knows I call. And I did play the hand in such a way where I could easily have something pretty good. And I just didn't think, like, what the hell is he bluffing with? Like, what could he have, right? Like, I don't know. It's like he called under the gun. I raised under the gun. He called right next to me. So he's got to have a really good hand, right? Sets make sense, right? He raised the flop, checked the turn when the straight came there, and now bombed the river. He's trying to tell me he's got a full house. So fuck it. I folded, and he had the top full house. So that's my thought process when it comes to the old school mentality, which you can see in this case wasn't even so bad, right? It was like I was hitting a lot of the right notes in terms of the hand breakdown from a very simplistic version, like a little Neanderthal-like, a little caveman-like. And again, it's not horrible. It's just not quite as effective as doing what we're about to do now, because we are coming back to 2021 and we are going to break the hand down with a more new school approach, considering combos and the whole bunch of things. Okay, here we go. Swig for that one. All right, new school. I try to do the nerdy face for new school, right? Because it's way more fucking nerdy, but it's good. It's just good. Oh. So I raise under the gun. My range here is going to have no. Okay. Cracking myself up. All right. So in this situation, we are doing quite well in chips. There is ICM factor involved. I believe we were at 2 tables, so a decent amount of shorter-ish stacks that are going to give a little more credit to under the gun raises. So Jack 10 of hearts is certainly a hand we're going to have in our opening range under the gun. It's very important when you are opening the gun to have a range that can have some board coverage, right? So if you only have a range constructed of your premiums, then you become far too easy to play post-flop. So we're going to throw some in there. We're not going to throw them all in there. Like, we're not going to have Jack 8 suited in there. Probably Jack 9 suited, maybe. It's like on the borderline. Jack 10 suited is a slam dunk, always raising this hand, especially at a shortish table. Now Nikita Bajakowski, he flats under the gun +1. At this point, that's going to be a very strong range. With players behind, left to act, and relatively short stacks that can jam, you would expect that Makita's going to have a range that can often call a jam if somebody else does, like squeeze. So that range is going to consist of a decent amount of pocket pairs, suited broadways like queen jack suited, king queen suited, maybe even queen jack suited is right on the borderline. He's going to have ace queen a decent amount, ace king some, and he's also going to be slow playing aces and kings. He can have jacks, he can have tens. He could also have some smaller pairs like sixes, fives, fours, whatever. What you don't expect to see too often are a ton of suited connectors calling in that spot, unless maybe, it's 9-10 suited, 8-9 suited. Like, some of those will call, I believe, as well. But that's now where you're thinking, like, not all combos of that would call. So he's definitely going to be overall weighted towards quite strong, right? Some board coverage with some weaker hands in that calling range, but mostly you're looking at a premium heavy range that calls in this spot. So that's fine. Now it folds around to the big blind, who folds, and the flop comes 8-7-6. So first thought, is this flop good for my range or his? I think it's actually quite close. Again, because he does have, pocket eights, pocket sevens, pocket sixes, but so do we. And I think we probably have, I don't know. I'm not even sure about this one. I'm going to have to run this because I'm trying to think because his range also in this spot has aces and kings as well. Because a lot of players under the gun +1 against the under the gun raise will slow play that to protect their calling range, which can open them up to playing more hands that offer board coverage like 7-8 suited and things like that. So we're betting here. We're at the bottom of our range, right? So often in a lot of spots, you want to be betting the top and the bottom of your range and kind of checking the middle. This is a spot where we really can't have a worse hand than this in terms of the rank of hand, right? We have jack high right now, right? When you think of our opening range under the gun, sure, we might have 5-6 suited, 6-7 suited, but all those hands made a pair, right? We might have ace-3 suited, but guess what? That beats jack-10. King-queen beats jack-10. So there really isn't a hand worse than we have in terms of where we rank it in our range, right? Everything else that we would have right now beats us. So this is, generally speaking, going to be a good hand to throw to bluff with. You also do block some combos of, I don't know if he has 10-8 of hearts or jack-8 of hearts necessarily, but you block jacks, you block pocket jacks and pocket tens, which are both hands that he could flat there and, be comfortable with after this flop. And again, we block some 9-10 suited as well. So it's a good hand to go ahead and bet with. We do. Now we're facing a raise. The raise is quite small. We are definitely getting pot odds to peel here to try to catch the 9. Also, as I said in the old school video as well, there are some runouts where we could turn this hand into a bluff as well, if it runs favorably. An ace or a king could be that card, right? If he does have something like nines and we put a lot of pressure on him when a king or an ace comes, that could win us a pot with the old nothing. So we go ahead and call the raise, and now the turn card is a 9. And generally speaking, in these spots, you don't really have a leading range that you can balance. Okay, so if you call this raise and just lead this turn, it's very, very difficult. And a solver may do it like 1-2% of the time, and that's a solver that can compute like super advanced calculations like in a second, or not even a second. It takes hours sometimes for a solver to solve all the way down. So a human brain can't really do that. So it's generally a rule in the spots where you should be checking 99% of the time. You should just always check, right? Because you're not going to be able to balance the 1%. That is if you're not trying to play from an exploitative perspective against a weaker player or something like that. So in this case, it's always going to be a check for us. And now Makita checks back. Okay. We were certainly planning on check raising here on this turn, but that play is now out the window because the river is an 8. Okay. Now the real question is to value bet or straight or check with the intention of check calling, check raising, not really check folding, right? Or maybe. So leading here certainly makes a lot of sense in a lot of spots. So does checking though. Like in terms of value, like you figure if you do lead here, you could probably lead for like 2/3 pot, something like that. Or maybe even less. Maybe because the board is 4-straighted, you could lead for like quarter pot and you could target some like weak 1-pair hands. Like, if he did have, well, what the hell? What kind of 1-pair hands? Like maybe ace-8 suited or something like that. We could target with a smaller bet. But overall, I decide that I think there's more value in checking with the intention of check call against some weaker hands, right? So if I check and he bets 2/3 pot, we just call. If he bets quarter pot, I probably would go ahead and check raise this hand because my hand is too high up in my range to just check call against the small bet. So against the small, I'm check raising. Against the big, 2/3 pot, I'm calling. But what am I doing against an overbet? Which you don't expect, right? So now my opponent's overbet. So what do we know about overbets? We discussed this in a video recently. When someone overbets, they are telling you one of two things. I have a really, 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 really good hand. Or I really have absolutely nothing. There's no middling hand. Like when he overbets here, I eliminate for them a 10 from his range. Like not just having like a random 10, like ace 10 or something like that, for just the 10 high straight. I can almost eliminate all of those combos, right? Sure, there's a chance that he has a 10, but we do block one as well, right? So that leaves only 3 10s left. And now you have to couple the fact that he'd raise flop, check back turn, and overbet this river with just a 10 in his hand. And that's a really unlikely scenario and an unlikely 9 for just a 10 to overbet here. So that leaves us with trying to figure out what are his value combos that are representing this for this size, and then what are his bluffs? Well, his value combos all are, let's say, if we give him some 7-8 suiteds, maybe, pocket 6s, pocket 7s, some 8-9 suited, maybe pocket 9s. Well, these are all the full houses, right? There's plenty of combos of full houses that go along with the story of him calling under the gun, +1, right? So we think about his range being quite condensed. It's quite condensed to pocket pairs, 6s, 7s, 8s, some suited connectors, but what else? Premiums like aces, kings, queens. He's not going to do that. He's not going to turn that into a bluff on this river. Doesn't make any sense. He might make a small value bet with aces or something like that, but he's never going to overbet bluff with like jacks, queens, kings, or aces. So we can eliminate all those too, right? So now what's left? What's left for the bluffs? You tell me. Think about it for a second. He called under the gun +1. We've already narrowed that range down, right? So what are you know what one bluff could be? 6-7 suited, maybe, right? Often what a solver would like to do when you have the bottom two pair and a higher card pairs on top of that, you block all the full house combos, or you block a lot of them. So often a solver would like to turn that hand into a bluff. So we'll give him 6-7, for example, as one bluff possibility. Literally the only one. And then what else? Queen jack suited? King queen suited? Ace queen? Those don't make a ton of sense to flat there and raise that flop. I mean, you could, but it seems like a very low frequency. Overall, I think you can see where I'm getting at, right? Very few bluffs here for that size. Whole bunch of value in full houses, right? So because he overbet, right, he's telling us he's either got a really, really good hand or a really, really bad hand. The thing is, there are so many really, really good hands and almost no really, really bad hands, which allows us to make a fold that nobody at the table believed I did. Brian Rass says, wait, you folded 10 jack? I'm like, yeah, right? Because it's not, in theory, in theory, I'm too high up in my range to make that fold. But when you add the extra layer of breaking down his range and realizing that his bluffs just don't really exist all that much, you can go ahead and make a really big laydown. But what's interesting about this hand, as I said, is if he bets 2/3 pot, then he can have a 10. He could have a 5. He could have pocket 5s and value bet there. If he bets quarter pot, he could have aces and kings and queens. So against those sizes, notice that the range widens, right? So when you overbet, your range is limited to really, really good hands and really bad hands. Then when you lower the bet size to say quarter pot, your range is like tons of stuff. It's really bad hands. It's really good hands. It's all the hands in the middle, which makes it impossible to fold my hand against. But because of the size that he chose, got a little greedy, and I don't think he thought about this well enough to realize that like he is not balanced here. I think he was trying to exploit me, frankly, in this spot rather than actually use a game theory optimal size, because I don't think he chose one. I think based on the way the hand played with me checking, calling raise and flop, check turn, check river, I don't think that his range supports an overbet at all in that spot. So I think that a little bit of greed on his part allowed me to get away from it. But it's an interesting hand, right? In that I'm check raising against the quarter pot because that range includes a lot of like marginal value hands. I'm just calling against 2/3 pot and I'm folding against an overbet. Poker's awesome, huh? Especially when you learn how to play it at a deep level. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I think this was one of my better reads that I actually went through with and followed because again, nobody would have faulted me for just check calling there. It's fine, just bad beat, right? But sometimes if you think at a deeper level, you can avoid some of these bad beats or you can make them less bad by making a very sharp fold in a tough spot.